I store my fabric mostly in color order. There's a separate section for novelty prints, and the Ankara fabric has their own category, but for the most part, I put them in color order. It makes sense to kind of come up with some system so that the fabric is easier to find when I need it. But I sort my fabric in categories under protest, because any category that I can choose for my fabric takes away the one thing that I really like about quilting is a serendipity. When there's two fabrics that join together in surprising ways, it's just so much fun and delightful that the way the fabrics play with each other is what adds so much interest. That's, to me, part of the joy of quilting. So one day in October, when I was putting away the Ankara fabric, I had folded them into bowls and had put them on my table to take them upstairs. I also had another piece of fabric that I was taking upstairs at the same time, and I really love the way that they combine with each other. To me, that's the serendipity that I would never have thought to put these fabrics together, but they look so great that I went ahead and made a quilt out of it. This black and white and pink fabric is an Ankara fabric. This purple one is also an Ankara batik, but the rest of them, this purple and this pink, are both regular fabrics that just wound up being in this stack of fabrics to take upstairs, and I think that this is a delightful way to put the fabrics together. I wanted to start the quilt right away, but I was getting ready for the 15 minutes to quilt challenge. I knew I needed to work on the older projects, and so I resisted the urge to start a new project. So when there was a blog hop challenge with the theme of love, I thought that this quilt would be a great way to meet the theme of the blog hop and give me a chance to make this quilt that I've been wanting to make. This is my first quilt using the design wall. So let me show you how I made this quilt top. So I thought that these would look really good together in a quilt, and these pink and purple fabrics I think would look wonderful for that. So I'm going to go ahead and start this project for the February blog hop. My current plan is just to make half square triangles and put them together in a random order. So all of them will have this on one side and one of these on the other side, and I'll just put them randomly. I'm going to try to put those on the design wall first to see if I like that look or not, and if I do, then we can go ahead and roll with that. I think that'll make a nice quick quilt that will look really pretty too. I started out with 10.5-inch squares of my main fabric. This is a whole yard of pieces. I have 10 of these pieces, and then what I'm coordinating them with is this purple fabric. For all these extra pieces, I just cut one 10.5-inch length and cut those, so each of these gave me 4 pieces. So I have 4 of the pink, and I have 4 of this purple African fabric. I'm starting with 10 of the main fabric pieces. They're all 10.5-inch square. I'll match each of these with this background fabric. Since I have 12 of these and 10 of these, a couple of them are going to have to match with each other. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Frixion pen, which is a heat erasable pen. I'm going to mark a diagonal line across each of these squares. So I use my square board for cutting the squares. I just made it easier to be able to see the lines where I was cutting. But now I'm switching to a longer ruler to be able to get to the diagonals. since this one isn't long enough to be able to fit all the way through. It's just a matter of going from corner to corner on the diagonal to be able to make up and mark a line. I haven't used this heat erasable Frixion pen before, but you can see the line easily, and even if it does show through a little bit, it's not a big deal because it'll be on the inside and it will be in the seam allowance. This is the cutting line anyway, so it won't show much, even if the Frixion doesn't work. So you can use a pencil or whatever you have. You don't have to use the Frixion. I'm going to do that on all of my fabrics. Just mark a diagonal line on both sides. I'm going to match them up with a different fabric. And all of these are, because they're batik fabrics, they're the same on both sides. There's no right sides, but you would want to put them right sides together. Once you match them up, so on both sides of the diagonal, a 1/4 inch on the right side, a 1/4 inch on the left side. You want to sew on both sides of the diagonal line here, and both sides of this diagonal line here. And then when we're done, we're going to cut them this way, and also on the diagonal lines, and that'll give us 8 triangles. So I'll go ahead and draw the rest of the lines. I'll go ahead and sew these, and then we'll get back and show you the cutting part. So I've gone ahead and sewn on both sides of the line in both directions, and so what I'm going to do now is to just cut them to make them have square triangles. So it's just a simple matter of cutting on the line in the corners here. Doesn't have to be exact, and also this direction. You don't want to move the piece, just cut it in the middle here. Cut it in the middle in this direction. I like to make sure that both of these match up into a line here. And each of these are going to give a half square triangle. And so we have 1, 2, 4, 6, and 8 half square triangles out of one 10.5 inch square. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these and press them all, and then I'll just arrange them on the design wall, and we'll see where we go from there. Since I want to put the box on the quilt randomly, I'm just going to shake these up and switch them around so that all the colors are all mixed and matched. It's going to be harder to do after I press them, so I figured I'd just do it now. Such pretty colors. And I also wanted to include this fabric because it helps tie the pinks and the purples together. Okay, now that I have all of the blocks up on the wall, I'm just trying to evaluate to see what it is that I like and don't like about this quilt. I really like how the colors look with the black and the white, as well as the pink and the purple. I think they look really good together. I like the fact that there are some clusters of fabrics that are put together in some places, but then the pattern gets interrupted with a different fabric that gets put in there. I don't like that there's a lot of blocks that are going from top left to bottom right. It looks like there's a long line, like those 3 pinks in a row that go diagonally down the quilt, and I think I like to move those around a little bit to have more pieces going different directions. Would be nice. I do want the quilt to be a little bit bigger, and this would make a good wall hanging, but I think it could still go a little bit bigger. I think with the seam allowance it'll be a little bit smaller, so I could probably add another column. I especially need to finish those 3 blocks there, but I could add another column, I think, and still get away with it with the seam allowance. It'll look fine. And then I can also add another row as well. So I think maybe I'll just make some more blocks. All of these half square triangles are not the same size, which I'm fine with. I was pretty quick when I was trying to sew them together really quickly. So I could take the time to trim all of the squares so that they are the same exact size. I have a lot of other quilts that have this part of the process that is incomplete. And so what I'd like to do is to just go ahead and sew them up together improv style. And then I can just add some extra fabric from the trimmings here to make them all into a quilt that will lay flat. So I added this light color fabric. Has a little gold speckles on it, and it adds a nice little sparkle, not just with the speckles but with the light color to the quilt. And I rearrange the blocks so that they alternate, going down and up and down and up, so it's a zigzag pattern. And I think this looks really nice. I'm just going to add a few more blocks here on the left side, rearrange them in some ways just to make sure that the clusters look okay. There's some places I don't like the clustering. Looks like a lot of the purple is on the bottom of the quilt. So I'll just rearrange some of that, and then I'll be able to sew the pieces up together. When there's a quilt that has the same block over and over again, I know that you don't have to worry so much about the seam allowances as long as they're consistent. So I thought that if I cut the fabrics consistently, I drew the line carefully, and then sew them consistently, then I would not have to worry about the pesky 1/8 of an inch that usually you worry about when you're working with triangles. For this quilt, I actually did carefully cut the squares. I drew the straight lines. But when I got to the sewing machine, I felt rushed for time because I still had the project quilting challenge to work on. And so I zipped the fabric through the machine, the lines that weren't as straight as they should have been. And so I wound up with squares that wound up being different sizes. Because I had promised myself that I would need to trim the blocks, I went ahead and sewed them together as best as I could, even though they had different sizes. The difference was pretty small. It was like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, and I didn't really feel like adding coping strips to them because when you make an improv quilt, you can just add another strip of fabric to make it big enough to be able to fit the next block, and I didn't want to do that. So I have gone ahead and put them together the way it is. Basically what that means though is that I do have some wavy parts on this, and I will have to tuck in some of the excess fabric in order to make the quilt lay as flat as I'd like it to be. Now that I've finished this quilt top and I need to quilt it, so I've already chosen the fabric that I'm going to use. This one I'm going to use for the backing. This is another Ankara fabric. It has pink and black in it, or at least has a dark color in it. I think it's a blue, not a black, but I think this will make a nice colorful back to this quilt. It'll be a nice surprise. By looking at it, I'll make it a reversible quilt. And then I'm going to use this black and white fabric as the binding. And I think I'll make a nice little binding for the quilt. Add the black and white touch to match the other Ankara fabric. The backing fabric is not big enough for the whole quilt, so I'm going to use some of this as well to help make it the right size. I'm going to take my time with this quilt because it does need to have tucks, and I need to fix some of the extra fabric that there is in here. So I'm going to take my time on working on it. My work usually gets busy in the spring and the summer, so I'm not going to be able to work on it as fast as I would like. Hopefully this quilt will be done by the end of the year. I hope you enjoyed watching this process of me making this quilt top. I've made 2 other quilts using the leftovers of this fabric already, and I'll link to those so that you can watch them in case you missed those. They are fun little journal quilts that use fabric manipulation, and they were a lot of fun to make. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you in the next video.